The moment I saw that bulldozer rip into my backyard, I knew Karen was behind it. She'd always had that gleam in her eye, the kind that screamed, "I'm in charge, and you're not." By the time I ran outside, my lawn, my quiet, private slice of suburban peace was a war zone of dirt and shattered dreams. I'd only been in Maplewood Estates for 6 months, a 32-year-old graphic designer named Jake Harper, trying to carve out a life after a messy divorce. I bought this house for its half-acre lot, a sanctuary where I could sip coffee on my deck and not deal with people. The HOA, led by Karen Mitchell, had other plans. Karen, 48 with her peroxide blonde bob and a smile that could curdle milk, was the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood. She ruled the HOA like a dictator, armed with a clipboard and an endless list of rules nobody voted for. My first week here, she'd fine me $50 for leaving my trash can out past community standards. "Jake," she'd said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I should have known then she was trouble. The trouble started small. Karen knocked on my door one spring morning, her usual posse of HOA minions trailing behind. "Jake, we're planning a community enhancement project," she announced, like she was unveiling the Mona Lisa. "A pool, right here, on the empty lot." She pointed to my backyard, the one I'd spent months planning to turn into a vegetable garden. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "That's my property. Karen, you can't just build on it." Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, Jake, it's not just your property. It's part of the community's aesthetic. We'll vote on it at the next HOA meeting." I didn't even know there was a meeting. That was the beginning of the nightmare. I showed up to the HOA meeting, a stuffy gathering in the community center that smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Karen stood at the front, PowerPoint slides flashing behind her, showing a sparkling pool with palm trees and lounge chairs on my land. "This will raise property values," she chirped, ignoring my raised hand. When I finally got a word in, I held up my property deed, clear as day. Lot 17, all mine, paid for in cash. The room went quiet. Karen's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that," she said, like a villain in a bad movie. The next week, I came home to find surveyors staking out my yard. I confronted them, but they waived a permit with Karen's signature scrawled across it. "HOA approved," one guy mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I called the city. The permit was fake. Karen had forged it. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I woke up to the roar of heavy machinery. My backyard was gone. In its place was a gaping hole, and Karen stood there, directing a crew like she was Steven Spielberg. "This is for the community. Jake," she shouted over the noise. "You'll thank me later." I was livid. I stormed over, yelling about property lines and lawsuits, but Karen just smirked. "Possession is 9/10 of the law. Honey," she said, tossing her hair. I called the police, but they said it was a civil matter. I hired a lawyer, who warned me that HOAs could be a legal gray area. By the time I got a court date, the pool was half built, concrete poured, tiles laid, my garden dreams buried under it. The cost to remove it, $80,000, more than I could afford. The conflict escalated faster than a reality TV show. Karen started telling neighbors I donated my land for the pool, spinning it as a selfless act. People I barely knew thanked me at the grocery store, oblivious to the truth. Meanwhile, my backyard was a construction site, my privacy shattered. Karen's HOA cronies started patrolling my street, citing me for every minor infraction: grass too long, mailbox slightly tilted. It was harassment, plain and simple. I started losing sleep, my blood pressure spiking every time I saw Karen's smug face. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One night, I got a knock on my door. It was Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a 70-year-old widow who lived across the street. She was the neighborhood's quiet observer, always watering her roses and minding her own business. Jake, she whispered, clutching a manila folder. I've got something you need to see. Inside were old HOA records, yellowed with age, showing Karen had pulled this stunt before. 10 years ago, she'd strong-armed another homeowner into donating land for a community gazebo that mysteriously ended up in her own backyard. Evelyn had kept the proof, waiting for the right moment. She's a bully, Evelyn said, her voice trembling with anger. It's time someone stopped her. Armed with Evelyn's documents, I felt a spark of hope. But Karen wasn't done. The pool was finished in record time, a glittering monstrosity that took up half my lot. Karen threw an opening party, inviting the whole neighborhood. I watched from my window as she cut a ribbon, declaring it Maplewood's community oasis. Neighbors cheered, sipping margaritas by my stolen land. Then she dropped the bombshell. She announced the pool was community property, meaning everyone could use it, but I'd be responsible for maintenance costs. The HOA had voted without me to slap me with a $500 monthly fee. I nearly punched a wall. The climax hit on a stormy Saturday afternoon. I'd had enough. Armed with Evelyn's documents, my property deed, and a megaphone I'd bought on a whim, I marched to the pool. Karen was there, lounging in a neon pink swimsuit, barking orders at a lifeguard she'd hired with HOA funds. The sky was dark, thunder rumbling, but the neighborhood was out in force, drawn by the drama. I climbed onto a folding chair, megaphone blaring. This pool is on my land, I shouted, holding up the deed. Karen forged permits, lied to you all, and stole my property. The crowd gasped. Karen's face turned the color of her swimsuit. That's slander, she screeched, storming toward me. But I wasn't done. I read from Evelyn's documents, exposing Karen's history of scams. Neighbors started murmuring, phones coming out to record. Then Evelyn stepped forward, frail but fierce, and told her own story of Karen's gazebo scheme. The crowd turned on Karen, shouting questions, demanding answers. Lightning cracked overhead, and rain began to pour, but nobody moved. Karen tried to spin it, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but her voice was drowned out by the storm and the crowd's anger. Then came the final blow. One of the surveyors from the construction crew, guilt-ridden, had tipped off the city. As we stood there, soaked and shouting, a city inspector arrived with a cease and desist order. The pool was illegal, built without proper permits, violating zoning laws. Karen's forged signature was the nail in her coffin. The inspector slapped a $10,000 fine on the HOA and ordered the pool demolished. Karen's empire was crumbling, and she knew it. She screamed, "This is my legacy," as the rain plastered her hair to her face, but nobody was listening. The aftermath was brutal for Karen. The HOA was dissolved after a class action lawsuit from the neighbors, who'd uncovered more of her shady deals. The pool was torn out, leaving my backyard a muddy wreck. But I didn't care. I sued Karen for damages and won $120,000, enough to restore my land, and then some. Karen lost her house to legal fees and moved away, her reputation in tatters. Last I heard, she was living in a one-bedroom apartment, still trying to start an HOA in her new complex. Good luck with that, Karen. My backyard is still a work in progress, but it's mine again. Evelyn and I planted a rose garden together, a quiet middle finger to Karen's legacy. The neighborhood's quieter now, and I've learned to check my property lines twice. Sometimes, I sit on my deck, coffee in hand, and smile at the empty space where that pool used to be. Justice doesn't always come fast, but when it hits hard. What's your take? Ever dealt with a Karen who thought she owned the world? Share your story, I'd love to hear it.